Welcome back to A Good Pour. This is Kathryn Good, your host. This is Conversations about Good Work in Our Community. And today I'm thrilled to have Dr. Scott Langford, our Director of Sumner County Schools, with us today. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be included, and I'm excited to talk.
Well, so what I would love to know first is how you got started in education. It is a calling to a lot of people. Actually, my daughter feels like she's being called into teaching one day. So how did it start for you?
So I'm a third generation Sumner County teacher. My dad was a football coach, assistant principal. So I went to my first high school football game at Hendersonville when I was 3 days old. And then I don't think I missed another until I went to college. So I grew up with coaches and administrators. I'm named after two football coaches. So, my daughter is a fourth generation educator. But the funny thing is that because of that, my mom was a teacher too. So my parents actively discouraged me from going into teaching because of the pay and everything. So when I graduated from high school, I went to the United States Military Academy for 3 years, thought I was going to be a second lieutenant. And then after my junior year, I had major back surgery. And so I kind of found myself in an odd place because I'd completed 3 years of school, but I wasn't going to be able to continue on at West Point because of my back surgery. So I transferred to MTSU. I got married. I didn't know what to do. I considered everything. So I majored in political science. I was a Russian language major when I was at West Point. So I went to Emory University to do a PhD in post-communist transitions to democracy. So that's how I started, and I taught American politics. I did voting behavior and things like that in addition to Russian politics. And so I did that for about 3 years. And right before I had to go spend 2 years in Russia to write my dissertation, I discovered that there was one job a year in the United States for that field. So realizing that the job prospects were very poor, that's when I switched into education. And so what really turned out amazing is that I just applied on a lark to see if I could get a teaching job. They were having a teaching shortage. I did not have a teaching certificate, so I had to do that through a job embedded program that they had at Emory. But I started teaching at Forest Park High School. And so I'm from White House, Tennessee, grew up in not much diversity. So when I found myself teaching in Atlanta, I was just south of the airport, and we had kids from 45 nations that spoke 55 languages. The kids were 99.9% free and reduced lunch, but it was a wonderful group of kids, and it was a wonderful experience. We had kids from Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Pakistan, India, all over Africa, Central and South America. It was really an amazing experience for me, and the best thing as an educator that ever happened, because I learned that kids are kids regardless of where they are and where they come from, and parents are parents, and everybody wants the best for their kids. And so that's when I fell in love with education and recognized my calling to do it.
So then when did you come back to Sumner County?
So interestingly, I taught 4 years at Forest Park. At the same time that I dropped out of the PhD program or switched to education, I got a call into ministry. But I waited for like 3 months because I really didn't want to tell my wife that I had changed careers like twice in like a 2-month span.
Switching careers.
Yeah, so I just did two. I just did both. So after 4 years of doing that bivocationally, I accepted a church in Waycross, Georgia, right on top of the Okefenokee Swamp. And so I left teaching from 2003 until 2008. So we moved back we were in Waycross for 3.5 years. And then we moved back to Nashville. Both of our parents lived here, and my parents health was declining, and we wanted to get closer to home, and we wanted to raise our girls here. So we moved back, and then I was a youth pastor for a while, and then I took another church. And then in 2008, I went and taught at Pioneer Christian Academy the year that it closed. And then I went back to White House High School. I was at a basketball game, and the principal at White House High School was my middle school teacher. He was a mentor of mine. And he came up to me in the crowd and said, "I need you to come here next year and teach English." I had been a social studies teacher. I said, "I'm a social studies teacher." He's like, "Dad, just go take the praxis and we'll get you in to teach." So I started teaching. So I got to teach at my alma mater where my dad was principal. And then after 3 years there, I went over to White House Middle as assistant principal. And then I came back 3 years later to be principal at White House High School.
Okay. So that happened quick.
It did, yes. Yeah. But I got to coach football where I played football. I coached wrestling because nobody else wanted to do it. I knew nothing about it, but it was fun. Loved the kids and working with them. And then, I came back in 2014 as principal.
And so did you teach English that entire time?
I taught English for 3 years at White House High School. I taught AP English Literature, and then I taught junior English.
Okay.
And I taught AP U.S. History, economics, world history, U.S. history, pretty much everything else when I was in Georgia.
Right. So you, in all that ran for commission too, right? In 2020 or so?
2014, actually. 2012.
2014, that's right. 2012 was Caleb started kindergarten late.
Yeah, so 2012, I was at the commission meeting.
Okay.
We'd closed schools because the commission at that time was trying to starve the school system. At that point, we were doing fundraisers to buy copy paper, and oftentimes we ran out of copy paper the last month of school. We weren't giving kids what they needed to have the best opportunities. And I remember sitting out there and saying, I'm either going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. We've been fighting about this for my entire life in Sumner County. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to run. I actually said it on Channel 4. And then I talked to a couple people, and then Dr. Phillips called me in, and we had a real heart-to-heart conversation because he said, if you lose this, it's like the old pro wrestling days of the Mid-South where if it's a loser-leave-town match. If you lose the race, then you're probably not going to be able to stay in Sumner County because that's the way politics is in Sumner County. So, I told him, and we agreed that I just needed to win, and so we did. And so, I was commissioner from 2014 until 2022, and then I was chair of the commission from 2015 through 2022.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being a politician.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a hard job. You still have to do quite a bit of that, even if it's not an official role, I guess. But how did all of that prepare you for your current role?
I think it really prepared me a lot because, when you're director of schools, you always need to be an instructional leader because we're all teachers at heart when you become an educator. If I had my druthers, there'd be a lot of days I'd rather go teach a Flannery O'Connor short story than, have a political squabble or something. But at the end of the day, it's really the same realization I had in 2012 is that I was blessed with a skill set that I can lead and I can help others work together. And so I think being on the commission, in addition to being a high school principal and then chief academic officer, it gave me the opportunity to figure out, like, hey, if we can work together as we have in Sumner County prior to 2022, we can really do amazing things, whether that's building the new courthouse or the Liberty Creek campus or ensuring that, we're able to do things like have every 6th through 12th grader in Sumner County have an iPad to take that off the table for equity. And so for me, it's always like I don't mind the politics because ultimately we have to have people that will jump into the fray and say this is important for our community. And if you don't, then you have to accept the consequences of what happens because other people will. And so I think for me, it prepared me because I understood, even though I came out of an English and social studies background, it prepared me to understand budgeting. Dr. Phillips gave me wonderful opportunities to lead and to study and to grow. But, at the end of the day, I've always believed that if you're in education, if you believe something's true, you have to budget it and you have to put it in your schedule. If it's not in your budget and you can't fund it, then you don't really believe it. And so we've been able, understanding that and understanding how county politics and county finances work has helped me be able to do that for the students of Sumner County.
So clearly our county is growing. What is the impact on that directly for our school system, but especially for class sizes and teachers and all those struggles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, it's interesting because growth gets talked about a lot. Sumner County is going to grow. We've known for 25, 30 years that it was going to grow and continue to grow and will continue to grow. I think what we've done exceptionally well in Sumner County, because cities in the county have worked really well together, is we planned for it. We have, Dr. Phillips did a tremendous job in helping us prepare. I mean, I can remember in 2014, the first year I was on the commission, that we sat down and thought through, like, what do we need to do to be ready for the growth that's coming? And that's where the idea of building the Liberty Creek campus, it took a couple of years to find the property and to get everything rolling and to get the bond. But, we pursued a path then of going through. In 2015, we approved a $76 million bond to update existing schools. Some of them had proper maintenance in 30 or 40 years, to add extensions. We had an extension at Gallatin High School. We had an extension at Hendersonville High School, added on to Station Camp Middle School. And we built William Burris Elementary. So what we've been able to do with the Liberty Creek campus is really address most of our growth needs. We'll have to, as growth continues, we'll have to add an elementary or middle school in the next 5 or 10 years, but we probably won't have to add a high school for another 15 or 20 years. So honestly, we're in really good shape to manage growth. I think what's interesting now is we've always had a lot of growth, like in the Burris area, in the Station Camp area, in the Gallatin area increasingly. Now, because of home prices rising so rapidly and interest rates being high, what we're seeing is people are now moving into areas that were rental properties a couple years ago. So, for instance, we added a teacher at Lakeside Park this year.
Okay.
We cut a teacher at Jack Anderson. We didn't cut a teacher, we cut a position because they didn't grow. And we've added teachers to Jack Anderson, I think, every year since 2002. So out of space, interest rates, probably people are staying put longer. But now you're starting to see in Portland and Bethpage and Westmoreland and, the Walton Ferry, Lakeside Park Peninsula and Hendersonville, you're starting to see people move to those areas because you can find houses that are under $500,000 and, with the interest rates where they are, that's more affordable. So that is kind of spreading out our growth a little bit, which helps.
How has education changed, especially with technology and that, but also just, how do teachers take care of their kids, and how has that changed through, just with growth, with technology, with just changing times? Speak to that a little bit and the challenges to be a teacher.
I think that teachers and principals carry a tremendous amount of weight right now. I think, coming out of the pandemic, our culture changed dramatically in many ways for the worse. I think that we've become heavily reliant on social media for what we believe to be reality. And I think that it got us so used to being detached from one another. I tell people all the time, if we can ever get people to sit around a table and talk 99% of the time, we can work out any difference and solve it. But I think increasingly we believe the worst about each other, and then we take to a social media forum instead of sitting around and talking about it. And I think teachers and principals catch the brunt of that. Also, we're looking at some statistics like if a pediatrician or a parent believes that their child under 3 is exhibiting signs of needing assistance or support, they can request for those children to be tested before they're 3 years old. We have an early intervention system. 4 years ago, about 48% of those students children that were identified qualified for special ed services. Now that number is 78%. We're seeing a huge increase in the number of post-COVID, the number of children with type 1 diabetes, Crohn's disease, other inflammatory diseases. So the needs of our students are increasing tremendously. Mental health needs are off the charts for students, for parents, for teachers, we're all part of the same society and same community, and it hits everybody. So I think that that's been a big change, but I don't want to, because I think sometimes we focus on the negative. I think there's been some real positives too. And I think that we have begun to shift to say, how do we look at each individual student and meet their needs? And technology helps us to be able to do that. I think our teachers and principals really do a tremendous job of saying, I'll give you an example is we have really strong foundational literacy. So if you're my age or older, then you think of that as phonics, but it's more than phonics, but it's how we teach kids to read. For about 35 years in education across the country, we got away from that. We used a theory where you memorized sight words and you looked at pictures and tried to guess, which worked well until you took pictures out of it, until you hit the age where books didn't have pictures. When you coupled that with a society that increasingly shifted towards being less literate and more visual through technology, it took a huge effect on kids and their reading comprehension and things like that. What we're seeing now is with our approach to foundational literacy, we're able to diagnose problems like dyslexia and things like that very quickly. And the sooner we can identify it, the quicker we can provide intervention, and that helps kids. It's not perfect, but then also bringing in tutoring and support from the community has helped well. And I think that we're in a place now where we're starting to claw back from COVID and begin to say, we raise our children together, and as a community we support them. And I think that's a big shift that I've seen in Sumner County over the last year or so.
How can we take care of our teachers better?
I think that, I think one thing is give them the benefit of the doubt. Like if something happens, reach out and have a conversation. I think some of the things that we're trying to do from my position is, I joke that sometimes the two institutions I've spent most of my adult life in was the Army and schools. And we develop a jargon in both that's almost incomprehensible to people. So from our side, how do we create language that's not jargon-free so that parents can understand what their children are learning? Because then that creates points of contact for us to have a conversation. we're working on a kindergarten report card right now that says things like knows their consonants. If I'm a parent, I can understand consonants and vowels. I don't understand standard RL 4.320165. So simple, jargon-free language where we can create dialogue. But I think it's, as parents engage in that dialogue, as community members, I think it's, and I think Sumner County does this really well, is celebrate what's going on with our kids in schools. When we had the Deanne DeWitt hosted a history forum, and the kids at Jack Anderson used multimedia to create all the historic sites in Sumner County. And just amazing artwork for third graders. And everybody that saw it was blown away. But we need to figure out ways to showcase more of that. But then together, let's celebrate the work that our kids are doing, whether that's, the kids at Hendersonville High School that built a prosthetic hand for a classmate, or whether that's third graders that see, hey, we want to tell the story of our county and share its history with a diverse audience.
We have kids in our county that are homeless. Mm-hmm. We have kids that struggle for food. I know we have a great resource center. I want to get Emily Graff on here at some point. But talked about, the kids spend almost as much time at schools as they do at home at this age. So how do we help those kids?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Sumner County historically has always done really well is community partnerships with the school. So, there are a lot of needs, sadly, that we don't even know about. Thankfully, schools are the place where one of the things we learned when schools closed for that first 9 weeks of COVID is that our children receive a tremendous amount of their services if they're at risk at school. And we had to learn how to adjust and adapt. But that's helped us on the other side because we become much better at going to where kids are and meeting their needs there. And that requires community partnerships. So in Sumner County, like especially in the Gallatin area, Hendersonville area, and Portland, others, we have a tremendous network of community resources that works together to help kids. I think the Family Resource Center is a great resource. We have, if you've ever had the opportunity to meet Keisha Ray, she works predominantly with our homeless students. And, they found things like a parent's car broke down in the pickup line of one of our schools. And we worked to get the car fixed. Well, the dad asked if they could bring it down off the rack because it was going to take a couple of days to fix because that's where they slept. So this is the story of Sumner County. The garage owner who was already fixing their car for free got them a hotel for 2 nights and then alerted us, and we were able to help. But we only found that because the car happened to break down in the pickup line at school. So I think part of it is listening and watching what our neighbors are going through, and just letting the school know if you see something where someone needs help. I think schools have become really good at, a lot of our schools now have rooms where they're set up like a store, instead of it being like, hey, here's a bag of shirts. The kids get to go in, and it's like you go to Hendersonville High School or White House High School or Portland High School, and you go in and you pick a shirt that looks like what all the other kids are wearing. So I think anything we can do together to close the gap. The principal at White House High School is my assistant principal. And it was eye-opening for me because we had a project student that we'd been working with, and she went out and bought all his clothes and a new backpack and all his materials for the first day of school. He was 17 years old, and that was the first time in his school career he had ever started the first day with everything everybody else had and took for granted. So I think being aware, and I think, United Way always helps. I think supporting those community organizations that we have partnerships with, and always, we have kids sometimes that identify great partnerships and they create them. One of the things that we're really trying to do is cultivating our students, because we pour a lot of resources and support into our children. We're starting an initiative next year called Sumner Gives Back, where we're going to try to encourage our kids and give them opportunities, because I think students today are really missionally focused. I think they have a calling to serve the community, and it's our job to not just worry about reading and math, but to also think about civic virtue and create opportunities for them to give back. So, I mentioned Hendersonville earlier and what they've done, building a prosthetic hand for a student. Chase Moore, that's our CTE supervisor, was in a meeting with nonprofits, and they said, hey, we have a big need for families that need beds. And we're like, you know what? We have metal shops. So they're going to start building beds for one of the nonprofits in Sumner County, and they'll be able to supply beds. So those are the kind of things that we're looking to give back, because we do benefit tremendously from the love and support of Sumner County. And we need to inspire in students the understanding that wherever you go, hopefully it'll be Sumner County, but if it's not, wherever you find yourself, you need to give back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't, this podcast is all about doing good work. We can't do good work. We don't, Jenny did us with Family Hope. Hope Family was here, and we talked a lot about, we have to be healthy. We also have to be educated, right? We have to, that's part of how we do good work. And we're all educated in different ways. We want to do different things. We all bring different things to the table, but in order for us to be successful in whatever we choose to be, in order to give back to the common good, we have to have that education piece. So thank you. Anything else you wish people knew about our school system?
No, I just think that, we had our leadership conference last week, so we had all of our administrators and leaders in one building. We had in one room, I believe at one point, we had about 386 men and women who pour their lives into our kids each day. And that was everything from transportation to finance to principals. And when you get together in one room, and I'm looking out, and, our guest speaker had asked, what are you most proud of this year? And we had a small group session, and I was looking out, I was like, this is what I'm most proud of. We have the most devoted, talented, diverse, wonderful group of leaders that we've ever had in the history of Sumner County. We've always had good people in Sumner County, but I couldn't be thrilled more for the men and women that we have that lead our schools each day from top to bottom and side to side. And that's something that, if you can step back and look and see, we're very blessed and fortunate in Sumner County with the people that we have.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. I have 2 kids, very proud public school. We've always said we're going to keep our kids in public school until public school gives us a reason not to, and we have not had that. I'll have a senior at Station Camp next year, a sophomore. So we're all in. Appreciate everything, all of our teachers, the entire department. So I want to go back. You mentioned Flannery O'Connor. Why did you mention her?
She's my favorite author.
Why? Why?
I think, I grew up on the tail end of Sumner County being agrarian. My grandfather was a tobacco farmer. I remember at the age of 5 thinking there's nothing I want to do less than farm. I wish I'd paid a little more attention because I could do more with my hands. But I remember, thinking about the values that I learned, though, from time moving slower and listening to people tell stories at night and laughing and extended family getting together. And I think when I moved to Georgia, seeing what it was like to live in South Georgia, where Flannery O'Connor was from. But I think that she captures, just in terms of being a master storyteller, she captured what I think was the beauty and the ugliness sometimes of life in the South. And I think she told it beautifully with, just she could turn a phrase unlike anyone. But, I thought that she was so imaginative. And then I lived in Waycross for 3 years, and I realized that she mainly described people that she saw. But it really helped me develop a new appreciation for her, because I saw that, she took the lives of ordinary people that she watched in her community and spun these narratives that revealed very essential truths about the human condition and how we're always, she was, interestingly, a staunch Catholic in a very Protestant evangelical area. And, she always had this, even in the darkest of her Gothic stories, there's a hope that's born out of her faith that's revealed, and also drawn to that too.
So I've picked up a couple Christian-based podcasts that talk about news as we're hearing it, and she was. I'm sure I read her in school, but it's been a long time. And they mentioned just in terms of just differences between religion and racial reconciliation and these things. She was before her time. And I love hearing that really she was just describing what she saw. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I was like, I need to go read her. And so when you said it again, I was like, okay, there's my wink number 2. It's time to go read her. So.
Her short stories are amazing.
Okay. Well, I'll have to do it. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
It's just, thanks for all you do. Thanks for the leader you are. And I'll see you in August at school.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.